All right. Well, again, my name is Travis, and I want to thank everybody for joining us on our dispatch end user session number 1. In today's session, we're going to start using the application. We're going to get used to the way it flows, the layout, look at how we can kind of customize it a little bit for our days on dispatch. Then we'll get into putting calls into the system. Now, first things first, let me go and start sharing the screen on the server here. And at this point, everybody should be able to see the server desktop. Is that correct? Perfect. Okay. So on my desktop, and again on yours, you should have a icon for ESO billing and dispatch. And like I think Matt was saying earlier, if you don't, on your computer, on your workstation, you should have your File Explorer. And in here, everybody should have a J drive. It's just ESO LifeStart J. And right on there is the shortcut that you could also copy down to your desktop. Okay, same spot. And again, that's also where the training videos will go. But once I have that on my desktop, it's a simple process of double-clicking the icon. What will happen, the system will go through. It'll look to see if there's any updated application files. If so, it'll download them to your local workstation. And either if there are new files or not, once the system knows everything's up to date, it'll then start running this billing and dispatch application. Again, it is both billing and dispatch, the same database, same application used for both. For our sessions together, we're going to focus mainly on the dispatch portion of the application. Okay, now initially, up at the top, I like maximizing the application just to use as much screen space as possible. And again, it being the server, there's not a whole lot to use anyway, so we'll use our imaginations a little bit. But it is my understanding that you guys have multiple monitors on your workstations, so we'll also show you how you can use dispatch in conjunction with those multiple monitors to use all of the real estate, the screen space you have available to you.
And as you open the program, Travis, there's no logging in, correct?
No. So again, the way the application works, and it's all based off of the login that you use to get into the PC. So on this PC, we're logged in with our ESO user application, so a login. So again, whatever user you logged into the PC with is what's going to be used for running the application itself. Okay. Now, once I'm in, up at the top, I have 3 separate tabs: Home, Config, and Reports. For us, we're going to stay mainly in this Home tab, and the Home tab itself is broken down into multiple categories. Those categories are tickets, call entry, dispatching, patients, tasks, accounting, and collections. Dispatching really is mainly going to work with these 3 in the middle: call entry, dispatching, and we'll play with patients a little bit more towards our 3rd session together, especially to see, if we have the same patient in there multiple times, how we can find them and maybe merge those folks together. Okay.
Travis, quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the user groups that we created, are they going to be able to see accounting and collections, or is it just that they won't be able to access them?
So the way that permissions work is it doesn't hide anything from the view within the application, but when you go to open those modules based off of your permissions, it'll either let you open it or it'll come up with a little error saying you don't have permission to view this.
All right, cool. Thank you.
No problem. Good question. Any other questions? No? All right. And as we move along, if you do have questions that pop up, again, I can't necessarily see you raise your hand. I mean, you can if it's fun for you. But just go ahead and let me know if you do have questions. We can stop and cover anything again that you might need to go back over. Okay. Now again, for us, call entry, dispatching, patients, like we talked about, these are the ones we're going to be spending most of our time with together over our next 3 sessions. In here, call entry, that's how I can open up various call entry screens. I have emergency, non-emergency, scheduled, and wheelchair. We'll take a look at all of these, how they work as we go through. And dispatching, the modules in here are dashboard, schedules, map, logs, runs, and on duty. So we'll take a look at these as well as we go through. Now, initially, the first place to start and where you'll be spending most of your time dispatching is within what's called my dispatch dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this dashboard button here. And the system will think for a second. and then it will open up my dispatch dashboard in its default configuration. Actually, give me a second and clear these billing ones that we don't need here, at least some of them. Now, what you can see initially when we get in here while I'm clearing these out, the way the dispatch dashboard is set up is in the upper left-hand side, I have what's called my runs grid. The runs grid is going to show me the trips that are currently either on a unit, they're currently being dispatched, or they're coming up to be dispatched. And what determines whether they need to be dispatched or not is how far ahead of the pickup time we are. So we'll see how that works as we go through today and start entering some test calls. So again, upper left-hand side is, again, my runs grid. Lower left-hand side is what we call our units grid. That's going to show us the units that are currently on duty within the application. And right now we can see we don't have any. That list is empty, but we'll go through and one of the first things we'll do today together is put units on duty so you can see how that process works. Then in the upper right-hand side of the application, the dashboard screen, I have what's called my fleets selector. Okay? Fleet selector. It shows me the different fleets, the different organizations of my units that I have in the system. And I can tell which fleets I'm currently looking at because they are the ones in orange. Okay? So the way the fleet selector works is if it's in orange, it's an active fleet, meaning the system is showing me the runs and units associated with that fleet. It's visible. If I select any of those fleets, do this real quick here. Let's say I click on default. And now default is in blue, meaning the system is hiding, it's filtering out any of the calls or units that are associated with that default fleet. And again, it's a toggle. So clicking it turns it on, clicking it again turns it off. Okay? So we can see now we get those back. And we should have all those ones cleared now. Cool. Okay. So again, toggle on, toggle off. No question?
Will default always be there? I thought we deactivated it.
Did default get deactivated? Let's have a look here. I think we left default for now because that's the one we're going to put all of our training calls in.
Okay.
But once you go live on the dispatch side, we will mark that. We can mark that inactive. Yeah, that one's.
Yep.
We have a training one here too. Let's see. Yeah, we'll clear that out later. Okay. Now again, you have several fleets in here, so I have to scroll a little bit to see them all. But they all work the same. Clicking them once turns them off, they're blue. Clicking them again turns them on, they're on. So for us, again, since we're focused on our training, we'll go ahead and turn most of these ones off here. Okay. Now, below my fleet selector, I have a couple of tabs here, one called Run in Progress Info, one called Unit Info. The way these work is if I have a run that I selected in my runs grid in the upper left, the Run in Progress Info gives me additional information, more detailed information about that particular run. And if it's been assigned to a unit, some information about that unit. In a similar manner, if I have a unit selected in the units grid, this Unit Info tab gives me more information about that unit, including odometer and dispatch log information if they've been on duty for a while. Okay. What we'll do is as we go through, later today after we've done a few different calls, ran some trips through the system, we'll come back in and spend a little more time looking at these two tabs to see how we can pull information from them. And then also if I want to add one of my call screens, so I'm going to go ahead and up my call entry, I'm going to hit non-emergency. The system will think for a second, and it's a little hidden because, again, we are a little shrunken down on the server, but just to the right of that unit info tabs, this little drop down arrow, that's telling me there's additional tabs that can be viewed here, one of them being non-emergency. So some of my tabs, some of my call screens add as additional tabs here in my dashboard. Okay, so here's where I can go and start entering my call information. All right, any questions on the initial layout of the application?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, in that case, let's talk about changing things up, customizing things a little bit. Now, initially, again, being on the server, not as much to work with, but especially if you have another monitor or several monitors to work with, you might want to be able to use those in conjunction with your dashboard. What I mean by that is, while I have my non-emergency call screen here, it's kind of shrunken down and small, and I want to be able to see all of my fields without having to scroll as much. So if I come to my non-emergency tab here, where it's got the title at the top, I'm going to click and hold my left mouse button down. And with that left mouse button held down, it's basically click and drag. I can drag that tab away from that section on the dashboard. And as I do, I'll get this little bluish rectangle. When I have that where I want, I can let go of my left mouse button, and I now have undocked that portion of the dashboard. Okay, so in this case, my non-emergency call screen is now kind of floating. I can adjust its size. If I come to the outskirts, the outer edges of that window, I get the double-headed arrows, and I can click and drag to adjust the size, and of this case, the non-emergency call screen, make it nice and big so I don't have to scroll as much. Now, the great thing about this, if I had another monitor, maybe it was one to the right, I could click and drag this now over to my monitor on the right-hand side, and in doing so, I can get more space here. All right? Again, if I do some more moving. So if I can, again, I'm going to move this back so we can see it a little bit here. I can do the same thing with my unit info. I'll pop unit info off. And with unit info popped off, I can have it as another window, resize that one, or within the floating windows themselves, I can dock them onto each other. So if I take unit info, again, clicking here in the header of that window where the name is, I get this bluish rectangle. And as I move that bluish rectangle on top of the non-emergency call screen window, notice on that non-emergency call screen window, I get in the middle of it some different arrows. I get an upper arrow with a box, meaning I can dock it on the upper half of this existing non-emergency call screen window or down below. Or I can also do it on the left side or the right side. So here I can go to the right, and now this non-emergency window actually has both pieces on it. The non-emergency call screen on the left-hand side of the window, the unit info on the right-hand side. And again, could resize it, move it to another window, could even add the run in progress. Here, again, I get the arrows, but here I get on the arrows on the unit info section, the right half, and if I put it right in the middle, that recreates the tab. So now, left-hand side, non-emergency call screen. Right-hand side, I still have my info tabs, run in progress info, unit info. Could then even take my fleet selector, and in this case, put it right on top. Resize it. And take this whole thing off to another monitor.
Will this stay customized for the individual dispatcher, or will it change everybody?
Great question. Now, let me make this a little bigger. So, yeah, great question. And that's the idea. Do I have to do this every time? Well, no. It saves this based off of the user account. In this case, it's the user account who's logged into the workstation. So if I've finished my session for the day, and I close the application, and I log out of the Windows PC and I log back into the Windows PC, I'm sorry, somebody else logs into the Windows PC, the next dispatcher, and they start running the application, it'll come up initially with those default settings, or again, if they've customized it for them, it'll have their settings. We'll say they finish their shift, they end for the day, they log out of the PC, I come back in the next day, whatever it happens to be, log back into the PC, start running the application again. Again, it'll come up. Once I get in, I will once again maximize the application, and in this case, hit my dashboard button. And the system, since I last had my runs and units extended out, and I had my call screen and info screens and a whole other floating window on the monitor to the right, again, let's say, voila, it brings it back up just how I left it. Good question. Any other questions about moving the pieces of the dashboard around, customizing it so it's easiest for the way I work with the application?
Perhaps you'll be touching on this later, sir. There are occasions where we have multiple in the facility. Are you able to have multiple screens up? Is that going to affect how it's set up?
So that broke up a little bit. Are you saying if you have multiple monitors, or?
So he's just asking if we can run the program on multiple workstations simultaneously using multiple dispatchers. Yeah,
so you can have as many workstations as you want to run the application can run the application. We have dispatch centers that have, you know, a dozen, 2 dozen. I think the biggest we have is like about 50 workstations running at one time. That's fine.
The whole billing staff will be in this at the same time as we're in it during the day.
And yeah, that's perfectly fine as well. Yep.
Same program.
Okay. Now, next thing. Let's say I drag and I'm moving things around, and it's not quite what I intended. I've now dropped that entire window on top of my runs. Okay. Well, I can again pop things off. Or let's say I get click happy, and maybe instead of, let me just pop the non-emergency off here too, just floating it. Instead of hitting the big X to close the main application, I think hitting one of these X's on these windows will do the same thing. All right, let's get rid of fleets too. All gone. Well, the application didn't close, but all those pieces of my application closed. And then I start thinking, like, oh, that's right. Whenever anything happens in a Microsoft product, right, restart, right? Have you tried turning it off and on again? So I'll close the application. I'll open it back up. And I'll think, okay, I'll just get back to my dashboard and everything will be just how it was. Okay, all those pieces will come back for me. Well, again, because the application itself is saving my settings, and the last time I was in here, I told the system I didn't want to see my info screens. I didn't want to see my non-emergency call screen. When I get back to my dashboard, all those pieces are still gone. Maybe I even got really click happy and I get rid of my runs grid. I'm just looking at units. That's all that's available. Okay? So if you're ever in that situation where, everything's gone, where'd the pieces go? I can always bring any of the pieces back by going to a blank area on the dashboard. Think of it kind of like a canvas. You're looking for an empty spot of the canvas. And I can right click. And when I right click on that blank area, it opens up this little menu for me. And I can say, you know what, I want to see those runs again, my run in progress grid. So I select run in progress grid, and there are my runs right back where they had been. I want to see my info, my run info screen, and it's back. I want to see my unit info screen, and it's back. Okay. I want to bring my non-emergency call screen back. So I can right click, and there's this call screen submenu. So I can bring them back this way. Or again, like we saw initially, hitting the non-emergency button up at the top also brings that non-emergency call screen back for me. So again, if I lose any piece that I really didn't want to lose for whatever reason, right-click a blank area, pick the option that I want, and it comes back. I'm going to reset things a little bit here again, since we're just on our server. Have a little bit of a screen space issue. We'll just reset it, make things a little bit nicer here to at least see. We'll go a little more. Cool. All right. Any questions so far on customizing your dashboard? Nope. Excellent. Now, if this all, it's a lot to take in. I know the customizations part can be a little tricky at times, especially as you're new to it. If, when you are doing your testing on your own within the dashboard and you want some help customizing it to make it easiest for you, let me know. Let us know, and support me, and the other folks in support can help you out in terms of customizing the dashboard as well. We can help you get it to work just how you'd like. All right. Well, with that said, I want to get to the point where I start using this non-emergency call screen to start putting calls into the system. But in order to do that, I want to make sure I have some units available to me so I can assign those calls out. So I'm going to go back to my dispatching category, and I'm going to select on duty. The little button looks like an ambulance on top of a clock. And when I get into my on-duty module, I have on the right-hand side the list of employees I can add to my units, and then left-hand side the list of the units that I can put on duty, or that are at least available to me. Right now, nothing there. And that's because at the top of my on-duty module, I have Fleet Selector, just like I did on my dashboard. So if I want to see the units that are associated by default with Station Fleet 1, I click on Station Fleet 1, and those units now are showing for me. Okay? Same idea if I want to see training or Station 4, I can keep adding those stations as I go, and it again highlights the ones, brings them up that are by default associated with those fleets. Okay. All right. Now, all of these units come up looking green currently. So in my on-duty module, when I have a unit that's in green, that's the system's way of telling me this unit is currently off duty. Okay, it's not on duty. I can put it on duty though. I just need to zoom in, focus on that unit. So if I want to put 3050 on duty, this little box in the upper right-hand corner of each one of my units, I'll go ahead and hit that little box. The system will then again zoom in on that unit. And from here, I can now put the information in I need to put this unit on duty. As we're looking at this, notice that our start time and our end time have these little red circles with exclamation marks on them. Okay? This is the system's way of saying these fields are required. I cannot, and not just here in the on-duty module, but I cannot save a record. I can't create a call. I can't work on a patient record. I can work on it, but I can't make changes and save that on a patient record. I can't, in this case, put a unit on duty if any of those fields that are required are missing or they're in error. So this is just telling me these fields are absolutely necessary. I have to have a start time and an end time to put a unit on duty. Don't need crew members. All right, that's not necessary. I could actually put this on duty. Well, we'll see how that works here in a second without crew members, but I'd have to have a start and end time. If I try to put this unit on duty right now, the system's going to come up and say, nope, can't do it, something's wrong. And again, I can tell what's wrong because I have these warnings. So with that said, we're going to start putting in our shift times. We'll say this one, we're going to do a 12-hour shift from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. Now, for you guys, your crew shifts, unit shifts, are you running 8, 12, 24? What sort of shifts are you guys running?
Yes.
All of the above. Okay.
We do a little bit of all of them.
A little bit of them all. That's perfectly fine. Again, Depending on the shift, just put in the start time and the end time. One thing to point out, though, when I put the start time in, the system assumes today's date. Same thing with the end time. Okay, if I just put in the time, military time, don't need any colons or anything, the system just assumes, oh, you must mean today. Okay, so in this case, yes, we want this unit on duty from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. Okay. We'll put another one on duty here in a minute and look at how we do it if the unit is starting on one day and ending on another. That's where the system, you have to be a little more specific when it comes to start and end times. Okay, but for now, since it's the same date and time for this shift, I can just leave it as is. The other thing we're going to do here, again, this unit by default is part of the Station 1 fleet, meaning most of the time this unit is going to be running out of Station 1, right? This is one of their vehicles over there. However, maybe on a certain shift, on a certain day, another fleet is a little low, maybe Station 5, you know, they have a unit that's out of, or, you know, it's in maintenance, you know, having some engine troubles, whatever it is, it's not going to be able to run today, so we need to send unit, you know, 3050 over here from Station 1 to Station 5. So we can change the fleet assignment for this shift at any point when we put it on duty. Okay, so again, if it's going to go to Station 1, when we put it on duty, we just leave Station 1. But if on a certain day it's going to be associated with a different fleet, then we can just hit the drop down and pick from the available fleets. In our case, because these are all training calls, and we want to make sure they're associated with our training company and that our billers don't actually try to bill these out, we're going to assign the training fleet today, and also on any of the test calls you're doing before or live, I highly, highly, highly recommend putting them in as part of the training fleet. Okay, if you don't, well, make sure that you know which one it is, because billing is live. So if it's associated with your Lifestar company and your Lifestar fleets, then they might think they need to bill it. Okay, so just an FYI, stick to the training stuff in these training sessions. All right, workflow standard, that's fine. Don't need anything else here. Again, we could put crew, but we're not going to worry about it right now. I'll show you how we can add those later. So now all we need to do is hit put unit on duty, and this time, because we have a start and end time and they're valid times, the system will think for a second, and then it'll put unit 3050 on duty for me for the training fleet. I can tell because it's gone from green to yellow. My put on duty button is now turned to a take unit off duty button. And if I come back to my dashboard, here I can see unit 3050 currently on duty. Cool. All right. Next, so let's add 3058. We're going to put them on duty as well. Now for 3058, we'll say their shift is going to be a 24-hour, a 12 to 12. All right, so from noon today to noon tomorrow. So since it's a start time on one day and an end time on a different date, I need to put the full date and time in. So we'll put today's date, 7/18/18, and then the time, 12. And because I put in the date when I put in the time, I need to add the colon. Then I can move to my end time, and they're finishing tomorrow, 7/19/18, also at 12. Once I do that, tab away or click away, the system says, yep, those are valid dates and times, so we're good. Okay. Again, I'm going to
shift.
Oh, go ahead.
Is that going to need to be changed every shift?
So every time I put a unit on duty, I do need to add a start time and an end time.
Okay.
Are we able to add a time vehicle's going to be on duty forever and go from like 1/1/18 to 1/1/19?
You can have that start time and end time be as long as you want, and we'll see here in a minute how, when I have a unit on duty, how I can adjust the crew members that are associated with that unit. I will say that, you know, we have some default reports on the back end that are based off of shift times, all right? Like especially unit utilization reports. So, you know, how many trips did this unit get while it was on shift? Well, if shift is the entire year, that utilization report gets a little funky.
Travis, when you're putting a unit on duty, up to the highest possible level of care, but that can be changed. Problem like where it says critical care 2. Is that correct?
Well, it's going to change
Right.
based. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, the way that the service level works, so again, this is default, so we're saying that 3058 by default, and we can see the unit defaults here at the top. Default station 4. Well, again, today I want training. And yes, the default level of care, service level, is critical care 2. However, as I add employees, so we'll say Todd, I'm going to add him, and to add an employee, I can click and drag that employee down into the crew section. Okay, let's grab the wrong one. Let's try to grab Todd again.
You do it right now, but you do it on static board.
Correct.
All right. It's the resolution. Oh, all right. So you can click and drag or double click. A lot easier. So when I double click it, we've got to add Bruce. Notice as I add crew members, the system will set the unit's service level for the shift to the lowest service level of all the pieces. So the unit's critical care 2, Todd's critical care 2, but Bruce is advanced life support, AEMT, and since that's a lower ranked service level than critical care 2, the system sets the whole unit to that service level. Okay. Doesn't mean it's stuck there. If I want this to be a critical care 2 unit, I can hit this drop down again and say, nope, this shift, it's still a critical care 2 unit. I will then get a warning. This is not an error, right? Circle with the red circle with the exclamation marks. That's an error. This is a warning. The little yellow triangle is a warning saying, hey, this level is higher than what we specified for one of the pieces, in this case, an employee who's ALS AEMT. Okay. But it will still let me do it. It won't, it's not an error saying it's a full stop. It's just a, hey, these things don't match.
It's set up this way, so because some states require that the ambulances run the lowest level.
Correct. It's the weakest link in the chain. So there are some states that require the whole unit service level to be the lowest piece of it. And because of that, the algorithm has been written in such a way that it will default to it to pass those state audits. However, in situations where that's not the state you're in, you can always just adjust it. Okay. And once I have this unit ready, I can put this unit on duty. And again, the system will think for a minute and put it on. And now I can see on my dashboard, I have 3050 and 3058. I can see that they're both critical care 2. They're part of my training fleet. Right now, they haven't done anything, so there's no space in the world they're at. That's fine. And as I keep moving, I can see the crew member and any run information. If they're currently on a run, I get that run information here as well. And they're not on a run. So,
is this one of those where you can change the order in which you see the things appear in that line side to side?
So right now, the system is showing them, yeah, based off of essentially the unit code. If I want to see, you know, the sort based off of service level, any of these column headers, if I click on them, and again, it's not going to do much because it's the same service level, but I'm now sorting by the service level. All right, so I'm sorting by, in this case, critical care 2. Now, when I sort that, it's alphanumeric, so, you know, ALS ones would come at top, right? But it still is sorting by this particular field. I can tell because when I click that, or if I click, you know, status time.
Well, what I meant is, like we had discussed in the pre-stuff, moving the column headers. I think it'll be good because of how we have things right now is being able to have the crew next to the ambulance unit number, see the unit crew service level. Obviously, I think people are going to expand this one so that it's wider on their screen. But I was talking about moving the column headers side to side.
So if I want, again, this is anytime I see something that looks like Excel in the system, is what we call a grid screen. Grid screens have special functionality, the sorting being one, right? So in this case, I think I sorted by the status time. Another thing I can do is I can, yes, edit how they're viewed. So if I go to this crew column header, and just kind of like we did with customizing the dashboard pieces, I can customize this grid screen by clicking on that column header and holding my left mouse button down, and then dragging, and notice as I do that, it starts to move that field. And it might be hard to see through the web GoToMeeting, but where it's going to put it, I get a little blinking bluish bar. So right now that little blinking bluish bar is right in front of current run. If I let go, I've now put crew in front of current run. Again, it's a little long, so I'm just kind of keep doing this, and so I believe we want it in front of status time. Actually, I think right there. Okay, so now I have unit and then crew. Status time. Yep, so again, you can customize the dashboard itself, can also customize my runs and units grids. So runs grid can also be customized as well. We'll look at that as we start putting some trips in here. Good question.
I'm asking a lot of questions to know the answers to, obviously.
So what was that?
I'm asking a lot of questions on stuff we've already covered because I know that it'll benefit the people in the room. It's going to make usability easier for them.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions anybody has so far?
As we start playing with this in the training portion of it, if we set up our screens in a particular manner, will it hold that, go to the live section?
Yeah, so any of the customization you do now is just going to be assigned to your user account, and that's just always going to be the case. The things that we want to make sure you use for the training right now are when we enter calls, making sure they're part of the training fleet and the training company. That way, your billers don't have them come up while they're trying to bill stuff out.
So this is live.
Yeah, you're live billing right now. You're using the system to bill out, which is why we want to make sure we don't put any LifeStar company calls into the system.
So what there is under the company header right there under non-emergency, that will give you the choice of LifeStar or the training company. As long as you do things under training company, it won't go to bill. Okay.
Yep. Okay, cool. Good questions. Any other question?
Actually, one more here. So what happens if there's a crew change in the middle of that? Let's say we put someone on for a 24-hour shift, like 3058. There's a crew change or 4 of them in the middle of that shift. How is that handled?
I love great segues. So, perfect. We want to switch out the crew members in this case, maybe the ones associated with 3050, since we don't have anybody associated with 3050. Okay. To switch out crew member assignments while a unit is on duty. Well, obviously, we could go into the duty module, take the unit off duty, put the crew members on that we want, put in the times, all the stuff, put it back on duty. Or, again, if the unit's already on duty, already on my dashboard, I can open up, and we're doing this a lot today and tomorrow and our next call together. And essentially, while you're working with the system, you're going to be going into what we call the workflow all the time, because the workflow is how we walk a unit through a call, adjust any settings like crew member, how we can send an ad hoc message to units, all sorts of fun stuff. And we do that by double-clicking the unit. Okay. And when I double-click the unit, it opens up this what's called workflow window. It says next step at the top. I'm going to move to the outer edge, and I'm going to make this quite a bit bigger. And here's why. We had that scroll bar. I don't like the scroll bar. I like being able to see everything. So I do recommend that you maybe make this a little bit bigger so you don't have to scroll, and maybe make it bigger than just what the last option is, because depending upon what the status is of the unit, right now this unit is available, it will give me different options that are available within that particular status. So since this unit is available, I have things like post assignment, area of post, set unit location. I can bring up the dispatch log. I can add notes, or I can take it off duty from here. Okay. Now the one that we want to look at is change resources, because change resources basically means adjust the crew members associated with the unit. Okay. So if I either double-click change resources in my list, or click once and hit the check mark at the bottom, either way, it opens up this change shift request window for me. And in the change shift request window, I am again going to make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see everything. But I can see on the left-hand side a list of my employees. Okay? And as I scroll through, let's find Bruce, I think EI. So I can see, there we are, Todd and Bruce, they're a little grayed out, okay, because these are crew members that are currently associated with another unit. Those are the guys we put on 3058. Here, if I want to maybe put Wendy on and Jeffrey on, if I just click on the crew members I want to associate it with this unit, those crew members turn blue. So whenever I'm here in my change shift request window, anybody in blue is someone who's currently associated with this unit. Okay. So I could then just hit this check mark, process it, and now I see Wendy and Jeffrey are associated with unit 3050. Again, maybe unit 3058, maybe, Todd and Bruce, they've come up for ending their particular shift, but I want to leave 3058 on. I want to change the crew members associated with 3058 at this point in time. I can double click 3058, opens up my workflow window again. Here I choose change resources, and I say okay. Start scrolling down. I will see Bruce and Todd again in blue because they are on this unit. If I want to take them off, I click them to deselect them. They're no longer associated with this unit. And I can put other folks on. David, and I'm going to put Wendy again. All right, maybe I click happy and put Wendy. So just because Wendy's grayed out, kind of grayed out and associated with another unit, does not mean I can't say, for one run, she needs to be on this unit because they need the extra hand. And we'll say, Brittany also. And I can hit the check mark. And now on unit 3058, I have David, Wendy, and Brittany. And then maybe Wendy's, go ahead.
It did not, so since it's not the initial on duty, it didn't change your service level.
No, it does not. So whatever the service level is when you put the unit on duty is what that unit service level will be for the entire shift, regardless of any crew change you do throughout the shift.
Unless you manually go in and change it.
Now, to do a service level change, that's not an option from here.
And there's no way to have crew members automatically switch at a certain time?
No, if you need the service level changed, you would have to take the unit off duty. That basically is what's taking the unit off duty, is telling the system reset that entire unit.
No, sorry. Is there a way to schedule a crew change?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
To switch employees like that, you have to do a manual process.
Okay.
With that said, some things out of the system is if you have a calendar app and you know who's going on to what units, you can always, Google Calendar, Windows Calendar, Outlook. I have customers that do that too. Say, unit 3058 is now such and such and such, but within the application now.
I suppose, yeah.
Okay. All right, and this one I'm going to go ahead and change resource. I'm going to take Wendy off this unit, and we'll say she helped with the one, but don't need her anymore on it. And let's do this. G-U-N. I can type in as well to narrow down. There she is. And process. Okay. Cool. All right. Any other questions on putting units on duty, or once they're on duty, doing our crew shift changes?
So what happens if we now try to, we'll pretend that you didn't take Wendy off of 3058. If we tried to dispatch both of those ambulances on calls,
then
there's a resource on.
She would be a crew member associated with both trips. Yes.
So if that was forced to their CAD or to their EHR, change that in their EHR.
Right, and then in the EHR, so what they'll get in EHR is based off unit, not employee on the unit. So, because in EHR, they log into EHR and say who's on the unit, which crew members are on the unit in EHR. So that's a separate crew process. In terms of what dispatch sends to EHR, it's only based off of the unit information.
So that's only for us. I think we would then.
Like, say you have somebody jump on call and now they're not on that truck for a while.
You just need to make sure to pull them off the other one or remember it. All right, we're good, Travis. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Okay. Well, with all that, now we have some units on duty, so let's go ahead. Let's put a call in the system, assign it out, just see how the base process goes. Okay. So initially, up at the top on my non-emergency call screen, we'll start with non-emergency. We're going to first pick a company association. Again, this is a required field, so I'm going to say this is a training company call. Call type, so call type is what sort of transport this is. We'll go ahead and say this is medical transport interfacility. Caller name, and again, like we talked about, there are some fields that are required, some fields are just informational. So obviously company is required. Let's go right to see a little bit. Priority is also required, but that's defaulted. Same thing with fleet, it has a default in there. We'll switch that to be training them. On top of that, other ones like caller name, caller, not necessarily required, but the more information, the better. All right, so caller name, we'll say Bob, and caller, we're going to say is in this case, we'll go with nursing home. Now, a couple things in caller. There are a few callers that are generic, right? Bystander, family, home health care provider. There are other ones that are specific, Dodge County, Columbia County, Washington County. So really the idea is, where is that call originating from? That's what caller is for, and who is originating that call. In our case, we'll say it's a nursing home. But again, in whatever calls you're taking, make sure to pick the appropriate option. All right. Date of service defaults to today's date. Pickup time defaults to when we're entering the call. Well, we'll say this patient doesn't need to get picked up until 14:45 for a 15:15 appointment. Right in my header section, problem, what's the issue with the patient? We're going to say doctor's appointment, nice basic one. Again, problem being the reason the patient is taking the transport. Why are we taking this patient? So there's several different ones to pick from. Again, you pick the appropriate one.
Most of the items in the home section are based off of the ESO, reason for service.
Gotcha.
The crew members know those terms in there, so you'll just get used to them. Obviously, doctor's appointment, IV start, that kind of stuff. We did add some of our own in there.
So it is editable.
Yeah, and so if you guys have recommendations on these,
we do.
Oh yeah, we have ideas.
You can change in the EHR because that's for the nemesis criteria.
Okay.
But in here, as you guys dispatch, we'll probably maybe between meetings get lists from people. Hey, add this if we can, and if it's if it looks decent, we'll get it added to the program.
I'll just add a column of my stuff for you.
Exactly. Okay, sorry, Travis. That was kind of an internal thing. You can go ahead.
No problem. All right. Priority, on the other hand, this is how the system should handle this call. We have a few different ones: code 1, code 2, code 3, long distance, and scheduled transport. So what priorities do is they tell the system a few things. One, obviously, should it be considered an emergency transport or not? So code 2, code 3, those are the different, and you guys should be used to these terms already. I think you've been using them a little bit. But those are emergency transports, all right? Code 1, just a basic non-emergent transport. And then we also have long distance and scheduled transport. This priority not just is whether it should be emergency or not, it determines when the run we're entering, how far ahead of the pickup time it should show up in my runs grid. Okay? Or how far ahead of the pickup time is the system going to have that run start blinking, flashing in that runs grid if I've not assigned it to a unit yet? Obviously, long distance transport, I think it was set, and that Mike, you can refresh my memory if I'm wrong, I believe that was set to 3 hours, right? Because we know those are the transports that are going to take a while to get there. So, again,
I think it means that the long distance response, our goal of having the difference between scheduled transport and long distance transport is so that it would show up and flash sooner. Like, oh, I have to get this, like Dawn. If we have to go all the way to Boston to get Dawn, I didn't say that name for you, Travis.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I thought you said early morning.
Would do that, and scheduled transport has a flash time that's closer to when the actual appointment time would be. So we may change the nomenclature on that. Yep. Okay, go ahead, Travis.
No problem. And so for this one, let's go code 1, non-emergent, nice little interfacility transfer. Service level, again, is what is the service level of this type of transport. So we have our basic life, advanced life, ALS intermediate, ALS paramedic, and then our 2 critical cares. For this, we'll go with basic life support. Nice, easy one. And fleet, again, since it's a training call, I'm going to pick my training fleet. Okay. Pickup notes, any additional note information the crew should have about the pickup itself, whether it be information about, going behind the back door and knocking twice, or who to talk to, or whatever data you think they would need when it comes to picking up the patient. Okay. Scroll back left. And then I have my patient section. Actually, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see a little bit more of my call screen without having to go back and forth for now. Patient section. So when it comes to the patient section, if I know the patient code, so every single patient in the system, when it gets created, the system automatically gives that patient an ID. It started at 1 with those first ones that were done for billing, and it kept counting as it ran into new patients, and it keeps counting up and up and up and up. Now, if there's certain patients that you know what their IDs are, you can just type those IDs in right now and go, great. If you don't, and chances are that you don't, you can then just come into the name sections and start typing in names. So, for example, we'll say this patient's last name is Duck. And if I tab away right now on the right-hand side, I'm getting nothing because there's no patients with the last name Duck currently in the system. If I just put in D, let's see what happens here. The system is going to show me everybody who has a D in the last name. All right. If I did DU, it'll show me everybody who had DU somewhere in the last name. So if this is somebody that we've taken before, and I want to use them on this call, I would put in the name and see if there's a matching patient. If there is a matching patient, this person's already in the system, I'm going to want to double-click that patient in this list on the right, because that tells the system to use this patient on this transport. If I just leave it and continue to type in the patient information and don't actually select it from the matching patient, the system assumes I know what I'm doing, and even though maybe the name, first name, last name, date of birth, maybe that all matches, but because I didn't actually select a matching patient, the system assumes, oh, I must know what I'm doing. It creates a brand new patient record with that same information. Okay, that's how we get duplicate patients. All right. Long story short, if the patient, you find a match, and it's the same one, and again, all this information on the right, it gives me not just name, but it shows me birth date, social security, all that good data. If it's the same person, double-click them, it pulls it in.
Will that then assign a separate new patient number to that second or duplicate patient?
Yes. Yes. So if I put in all of Loretta's information exactly the same first name, same last name, same date of birth, same social security, but I don't actually double-click Loretta, and she'll be sitting here in the list as the only one left because it's all the same information, but I don't actually double-click her in the list. The system assumes it's another Loretta Dunn, even with the same information, and when I save the call, it creates a brand new Loretta Dunn. Okay. Now for us, in this example, I am going to go with patient Donald Duck. I hopefully here, and I do recommend using, and you can use the ones that I use in our training calls, just use them for other additional ones. But as you're entering your training tickets, stick with, I like cartoon characters that are fairly famous, because if maybe we forget to change this to training company and we leave it as Lifestar, hopefully if one of the billers sees a ticket for Donald Duck or Foghorn Leghorn or something along those lines, they'll get the idea that that can't be a real person. All right, so just a little kind of FYI. All right, so date of birth, and if we have it, we can put it in. It's a guess. Social Security, again, if we have it, we can put it in. Though notice, none of these things have those red circles with the exclamations. None of it is required. Okay, and we'll just leave, but we'll put it in. We'll say Donald. We have his for now. 97654 321. Cool. If I have patient weight and height information, I can enter it there. Then I move down to my pickup. So again, on my non-emergency call screen, last two sections, pickup, destination. Okay, pick them, destination. So where are we picking them up from? Where are we taking them to? Now, if we're picking them up from a location, a resource, a facility that we have in the system, and we know what that facility, that resource's ID is, just like on the patient record, the top field was patient ID, the top field on my pickup and destination, where it says pickup resource, destination resource, these top fields are both for the resource ID. Okay, so every resource in our system, hospital, nursing home, doctor's office, whatever it is, has its own standalone code, its own standalone ID. If you know what it is, you can put it in here and the system will pull that resource for you automatically. If you don't, chances are you'll learn the ones you go to most commonly pretty quickly, but the ones, you're not there yet and you're not quite sure. So if you're not sure what it is, you can always hit this little magnifying glass on the right-hand side, and it opens up a search. Okay, and the system will then let you search for that facility's name. You can search by what city it's in, address information if you have it. When I like to, especially for these calls, narrow it down. I'm looking for a skilled nursing facility, right? There's a nursing home they called, so I can just choose the resource type, and it now is showing me all of those resources that are associated as a nursing facility. All right, here we go. Bayside Manor. It's a good one. I can see right here, Bayside Manor is code BAYSD. These codes are case sensitive, so I could, if I knew it, I could have typed in BAYSD into that resource field and gone there. Okay. In this case, since I wasn't sure, I could just double click it. The system pulls it in. Okay, great. Then where are we headed to? Well, we're going to, what's the hospital you guys go to the most?
Let's go with St. Joe's.
St. Joe's. So I can start typing the name. St. The system starts to narrow down. Let's see. St. Joe's Radiology. I'm guessing it's not the radiology.
That's a different one. Yeah, it's JWB.
All right, STJWB. So I can find it, double click it. Again, we'll see what the code does. If I know the code, STJWB, I can type that code in, hit tab, and the system pulls the resource for me. All right. So once I have all that in, the system then says, great, I can verify it. Information looks correct. I can then at the top hit this little check mark to save the call. The system will think for a second. It'll then create the call for me, adding it to my runs grid. Okay. And I can see the run gives, go ahead.
Is there a field for callback number?
Not currently in the non-emergency call screen. We do have that field in the system, and I can add it for you if you want.
Yes, please.
Yeah, give me a second. after we're done here, I'll get that field added. I'll put it probably right up here under caller.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, I don't think so.
All right, cool. So now I have this call, and a couple things, because I picked the priority of the code 1. It's in that greenish color. It shows up right away because we're definitely within our pickup window. All right, we're about 15 minutes away. I can get more information about this call just like we do with our units by scrolling to the right, see who the patient is, where in the pickup, where the destination. I now want to get this run assigned to a unit. We'll say we'll get this on unit 3050, give them something to do. Okay. A couple different ways I can assign a run to a unit. Okay. First of all, I can, if I want, click and drag from my run number down to my unit information. Okay. And when I get down to my unit grid, it'll highlight which unit I am currently going to associate it with. The text gets a little darker, the other units kind of gray out. So you can click and drag. That's definitely a way. A lot of folks do that. That's not the way I prefer to do it, because especially if you have a lot of units on duty, a lot of runs, you're busy, you can click and drag and like, oh, wrong one, assigned to the wrong unit, then I have to unassign it. We'll talk about how to do that a little bit later. But it can be, it leaves you more open for errors by the click and drag, I think. The way I prefer doing it is if you double click the run. So remember earlier, to get to the unit's workflow, we double click the unit. Here, I double click a run that is yet to be assigned to a unit, and it opens up this alert unit window for me. And when I have that window open, I actually make this a little bit bigger here so it's a little easier to see everything. A bit more. There we go. With this alert unit window open, I get information about the trip, the patient, the pickup, the destination, all that good stuff. On the right-hand side, if I scroll a little bit, because again, this is the monitor, the resolution on the server is a little smaller, so I got to click and drag, but it shows me where that pickup is. Also, my units have never done anything, so there's no actual location for them in the world, but as I start assigning them out, running them, the system knows where their last locations were, where they did their last drop-offs or pickups, wherever they are. Here in my available unit section, it's going to tell me where they're at, about how far away they are distance-wise, and about how long it's going to take them to get there. Okay. Now, again, there's no location currently. The system doesn't really know, but this is very useful if you're trying to figure out who's closest, who's furthest, that sort of thing. Okay. Now, for us, like I said, we want to put this on unit 3050. They haven't done anything yet today, so I'm just going to double-click 3050 in my list of available units. Now, once I do, I get a workflow pop-up. Basically, it's telling me I'm having a service level mismatch. Okay. This is saying that the unit service level currently is critical care 2. The run service level when we entered is BLS. Am I sure I want to assign a BLS run to a CCT unit? Yeah, I do. So I can go ahead and just hit yes here.
Is there a way that we can modify that so that it only clicks this, or that only pops up if it's a higher than that assigned unit level?
No, the system has been coded so that if there's any service level mismatch between the unit and the run, it's going to come up and warn you.
So it's one way.
And it's a fail-safe, right? To make sure we're not assigning any like CC2 calls to a BLSE unit. Or if we don't want to, conversely, maybe we don't want to tie up a CC2 unit with a BLS call if we don't have to. But in this case, they're the only two we have, so we do it that way. When I do, I can see that on my runs grid, unit 3050 is now the assigned unit. It's pretty much added information here, but I now on my units grid get additional information because this is on a run. I can see the status goes to alert, and as I continue to scroll to the right, I can see where it's headed, the run is associated with, the priority and problem for that run, and where the pickup and destination are. Okay, so all that information about the run that has been assigned now shows up in the units grid. And
Okay,
because
of so alert means that you've dispatched the call. That will change to en route when the crew is en route. The time that you see on the status time right now, once it hits 3 minutes for code 2 and code 3, or 5 minutes for code 1, will start to flash. Telling you that crew is taking too long to get out the door after you assign them the call.
We're still doing the physical phone call and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, but this will automatically, like when he assigned it to 30. Oh, hey Travis, did you disable the messages going to the phones?
I think we did. Let me double check that on the server. Hold on a second.
Gotten an assignment.
Did they get it?
I don't know. That just hit me. I put all those phone numbers in and all the text addresses. I know we talked. Yeah. Mike's gonna go out and check quick.
Yeah, it looks like it's still on. I'm gonna turn it off here real quick. Well, you know,
we were playing with, or just got an assignment, literally, because there's a crew that's on.
Well, you know, again, that's why we use cartoon characters. You know, that's
so when you
I listen to the phone call. Am I really picking up Donald Duck? Yeah, he's over by the lake. Go get him.
Just let him wander for a little while. So that will actually, as soon as you hit 3050, it immediately sends a text message to their phone with all the information that you have. Open up their EHR, they can hit download CAD for their squad, and it will pull. That's what that button's for. Yeah. Mike's almost back. He just had to go talk to our current dispatcher quick.
Like, hey, they might talk to you about that. All right. Yeah. Oh, we were April Fools. Yeah. Anyway. So, as you can see, yeah, the status now starts blinking because it's been at the alert status for over 3 minutes. The idea that I assigned it to them, I haven't heard back from them saying that they're en route. Well, maybe now I have heard back from them saying that they are en route, so I just want to walk through.
Oh, yeah, they did. They called en route.
Oh, they got it?
Yeah, they did. They got it.
Oh, fun. Well, it's off now. All right, so when I double-click Unit 3050 again, I get my workflow to come back up. Now, my first option, though, because their current status is alert, is en route, the next step in the dispatching process. So again, the unit comes back and says, yep, we got the information for Donald, which they did, and they're on their way to pick up Donald, which hopefully they're not. So we set their status to en route, and now I can see, yep, en route. Now, I do still have the run up in my runs grid. Okay, and again, some folks like it when a run has been assigned to a unit to no longer have to see that run in the runs grid, especially if I got a lot of calls coming up. So if I'm one of those people that I don't want to see the run in the runs grid after it's been assigned to a unit, I can right-click again a blank area of my dashboard. And then down here, the last choice is options. So this lets me play with some options of my dashboard. So what those options are, well, first of all, is grid font size, meaning the text I'm seeing in my grids right now is set to 12. Well, maybe I think that's a little big. I can set that to 10, tab away, and the system will automatically switch the font size for me. Or if I think that's way too small, I can come back and say, yeah, let's make that 16. And then I feel like I'm really old. And so we'll set that back to 12. But again, I can change that font size to match whatever I want it to be. And then I have a couple checkboxes, a few checkboxes in here. Actually, the next one is hide runs with unit assigned. So I'm going to put a check mark here where it says hide runs with unit assigned. And as soon as I do, that trip for Donald gets removed from my runs grid because it's already assigned to a unit. All right. If I need more information about it, obviously I can get it right here from my units grid. Don't sync run and unit selections means that when I assign a run to a unit, remember on that run we saw that the unit was 3050, and on the unit we saw that it was assigned to run 0001 for Donald. Well, that just won't update those fields. Okay. Blink check interval, meaning how often is the system going to check to see if it should make a run start blinking because it hasn't been assigned yet, or make a unit start blinking because it's been in that status for a certain amount of time. Okay, right now it's every 5 seconds it's going to check to make sure it should blink or not. Then I have two different check marks. I do recommend this first one, put it on here. So this blink, disable unit blink time from unit time. There's an algorithm in the background that says checks unit times, not status times, but specific unit times for shift stuff, and it's going to make those units blink, and it can seem somewhat random based off the algorithm. The unit status times, this is what the system did to make that 3050 start blinking after 3 minutes of alert. So that's a good one to maybe keep unchecked for you.
20 minutes on scene, 20 minutes at destination.
Okay, cool.
All right. Windowed mode means that if I hit windowed mode, it basically undocks every single piece of the dashboard and allows those dashboard pieces to still stay visible and active regardless of where my focus is in the application. What I mean by that, right now, if I go to another module, let's say I go to my, and we'll be a little bit later, my run search. So I'm going to look for trips, right, from today or whatever it is. We'll play with this more later. But notice once I get to run search, all those pieces of my dashboard go missing, right, because it's no longer the active tab. Even if I have, my call screen and my info screens and things on different monitors, right now the way the system works is if I go to a different tab, change the focus, it hides all them until I get back to my dashboard. What windowed mode does is if I go to a different piece of the application, change the application's focus, all those floating windows will still stay visible. Okay. Again, on the server, it's not as useful because we just have the one monitor, but if you're in a multiple monitor setup, windowed mode can become very useful. And enable custom call screens, that's just saying if I don't like the buttons that we have by default for your call entry screens, you can assign your own, and then the system won't use those though unless you tell it to with that check mark. All right, some of the dashboard options. Any questions here? So was it?
Oh, I think we're good here.
All right, cool. All right, so with that, again, the unit, they are en route, so we'll say they are now at scene. They're trying to grab Donald. And as they're doing that, lo and behold, we get another call coming in. So even as we're dispatching one, again, the nice thing about having my non-emergency call screen as part of my dashboard is it allows me to continue to fill things out. We'll do another medical transport interfacility. I'm not going to worry about the name. Again, we'll say this is, I like picking on nursing homes, the training calls, because you tend to get a lot from them. And again, today's date, we'll say the pickup time for this one is 15:30. Oops. Tab too far. Let me tab back. Come on. 15:30 for a 1600 appointment time. Our problem is going to be back pain. We'll go with scheduled transport here because I want you to see something. And our service level will go ALS intermediate. Maybe not for this one, but just to see, you can pick different options. Fleet training.
Oh, all right.
As I was, yeah.
But literally the only ALS intermediate that we have, and he's actually in the room. That's kind of funny.
That is pretty funny. It's like I knew, but I didn't. All right, so then I am again going to start putting my patient information in. So again, I type in last name. Well, Duck. Yep, great, but it's not Donald. It's Daffy. And again, we've kind of seen this already. We'll do a search. Since the last time I was in the pickup search, I was looking for skilled nursing homes. It pulls up skilled nursing homes again for me. Okay, so I can just do this.
I do have a question on the search on that. Is it
Sure.
like the HR where St. Joe's Hospital, you can start typing Joe and it'll show up?
So if I start typing here in the name, it's going to now show me everything that has that in the results. So I get all these ones with Manor because I started typing in man. Oh, how nice. Friendship Manor. That sounds sweet. We'll use that one. And then destination. STJWB, I believe. Hey, bingo. So again, once you start figuring out the codes, the ones you go to a lot, they'll just start falling in place. All right, so I got this call ready and set to go. So I'm going to process it. As I do here, because we picked the scheduled transport priority, the system comes up and says, oh, okay, that priority we've been set to prompt for return, meaning since I picked scheduled transport priority, I'm telling the system I want to be asked whether I should set up a return trip for Daffy later. All right, do we want to set Daffy up with a return trip later? And in this case, maybe I do. So the system defaults some information for me. It's got, the return run numbers based off of the initial run number with an R at the end. Perfect. It defaults pickup and appointment time to the end of the day. If I know when the pickup and appointment time should be for his return, I can overwrite these and fill those in, right? His appointment's at 1600. He should be done by 1730. That's when the pickup time should be. I could absolutely type that in. Or if I'm not sure, I can leave the 2359 in here, and the system just sets the pickup and return for the end of the day. It's going to be on my grid for me, right? And then it defaults a priority of code 1, non-emergent, which is fine. And I can hit this check mark to save this trip for Daffy. Now, it does tell me he already has a trip for today. Well, obviously, that's why I want the return trip. If I don't want a return trip, I hit this X here, and it will cancel out and only have the outbound one for me. Okay? But if I do want that return, I hit the check mark, and now I have his outbound, and I have a return for Daffy. See that here.
This question is open to management or to you, sir. Here you put that the return would have a part to the call number. Are we changing our call number system?
Yes.
Okay.
You won't have to worry about them. They'll just make them all themselves. Yeah.
So even if it's a return or something like that we have pre-scheduled?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because actually, like, let's take the dialysis patient that's going right now. That run number, that call is going to show up in the system, populated with a run number and able to be editable. Did we do 4 days on that, I think, Travis?
I think so. I
can't remember. It's something like that. It's going to pop up way early, but as soon as it pops up, it's got a run number. And if a call gets canceled, that run number doesn't get reused. It never gets reassigned. So how we handle run numbers is completely different. And they're going to the crew now anyways. It's going to get pushed to their EHR, so there's no more handing out run numbers at the end of calls.
Cool.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so that's all changed. Hey, Travis, go ahead.
Yeah, and it looks like 4 days for the scheduled transport. So
Yeah,
there we go.
4 days.
Don't need this one. All right. So we have Daffy's outbound and return. I want to get the outbound going, so I'm going to double click it, and we'll assign this one to 3058. Notice it's the only listed available unit because it's the only one that's not on transport. If I want to see units that were on transport, there's this unavailable unit section down below. I can hit it, and we'll hit available units because it's all shrunken down. And there's 3050, but they're currently on a call. Right.
With that being said, if you know that truck is going to be clearing the next few minutes, can you assign it to the truck that's not available?
Yes. You can just double click it, and what will happen is the unit, when it clears, when it finishes its first run, it'll look at what's called its queue. So when you double click this one, it basically puts the run into the unit's queue, and it'll sit there until the unit becomes available, completes its first run, and then the system automatically switches it to alerting it to the next trip.
That'll be really nice for the wait return.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll
calls. There's times where you're at the hospital, calls coming in, the crew has no clue, and you send out the alert.
And we'll look at that probably at our next call. We'll look at how to stack calls.
I had a question on the graphics. Can you add a field for patient wait? And is there anything where we can add like little notifications like sick name or use the back door or
that.
I'm pretty
is
sure
that
that
under caution notes or?
So let me get this assigned, and then we'll take a look at that call screen. And again, it's a CC2 unit ALS service level. Just say yes real quick here. Because I turned off the messaging, you're going to get this message to pop up during our training because it can't send that alert message. That's what the system's telling us right now is that it cannot send that message. Just hit OK. It's informational only, and once you're live, we'll turn it back on so you won't get that one anymore. Now, in terms of additional information, yes, if you put into pickup notes here, you know, knock on the back door, that will go to your units in that alert message.
Will that stay with the patient's account?
No. If there's certain information that you want to follow the patient along, there's a field in the patient we'll talk about. It's also called an alert field. An alert field in the patient record where whatever you put in there, it'll just kind of follow that patient along wherever they use within the dispatcher billing system. And there was one that we saw earlier. Actually, let me just bring it up so you can see what I'm talking about. We'll talk more about how to fill that information out a little later. But you see here for Jerome Dudek, it says his PCS form expires on 9/3/2018. That's information that's been added into that patient's alert. So whenever you use them, it shows. Okay, good question. Like I said, we'll cover a little how to do that on our next conversation. Okay, cool. Any other questions?
No, I think we're good right now.
All right. So while we're doing all that, 3050, they radioed in. They had found Donald. They are departing the scene. When it departs scene, when we go from the at scene step to the depart scene step, we now have a patient. The patient's loaded on the call, on the transport. The system is going to ask what the current odometer reading is of the unit. So that actually leads me to a couple questions for you folks. Do you track the odometer information within dispatch?
We start at zeros.
Okay, and you start at 0. So perfect. We'll just leave this one at 0, and we're good. Okay. And then also at the same time, 3058, they were radioed in. They got the alert message there en route. Okay, so again, once we have the calls in the system, once we assign them to the units, this is a pretty straightforward process of walking those units through the calls. Okay. And we'll just finish this off. So 3050, you know, they didn't speed. They were very careful, but they got there in, you know, a minute and a half. So they radio back in. They're now at destination. We were very safe and careful. It's fine. All right. So then again, because we are now at the destination, having taken the patient, the system's asking for odometer information, and you guys like take last 3, last 4. What's your standard, or the whole thing?
We use a trip meter, so whatever the actual mileage is for the.
Perfect.
So.
We'll say 6.3.
In a minute and a half. That's good.
I know, right? Those guys, they're not speeding, they're efficient. There's a difference. All right.
That's our mileage.
All right. Again, then I get a little error because it's not sending out an alert message. So just so you know, those alert messages don't just go out when you assign the unit to run. It also goes out when the unit gets to the destination because it's got all those times so they can verify them. Okay? Let them know.
So it depends on their time when they get to the destination?
Yep.
The phone or to the computer? Phone.
All right. Okay. And then we'll say that, you know, they're really annoyed with Donald. He has a bad temper. They can't understand what he's saying, so they slowed down just enough to push him out the back, and they are done.
Bye, Don.
Never happens. All right, so 3050 is now completed, and we can see they're available for taking another transport. All right. Any questions on using the non-emergency call screen to enter our trips, assigning those trips to units, how the different priorities make the runs act differently, including that scheduled transport asks us for a return, or then assigning runs to units and walking those units through the dispatching process.
I think we're...
It all looks great now. Let's all, once we start trying to use it, then, yeah, well, that's all right. Okay, that's fine. So next thing, so far we've been using our non-emergency call screen. Well, I know you folks, from my understanding, aren't just doing non-emergency, you're doing emergency calls too, correct?
Yes.
Correct. So let's take a look at some of the differences between my non-emergency call screen and my emergency call screen. So I'm going to hit the emergency button up in my call entry section, and I now get this additional tab for my emergency call screen. So one thing I want to point out, always point out at this stage, just because I'm using the emergency call screen here does not mean I can't put in a non-emergent call. Or just because I'm using the non-emergency call screen by name doesn't mean I can't put in an emergency call. Okay, it's not the call screen that determines whether the system considers the trip an emergency call or not. It's the priority, right? So code 2, code 3 are our emergency priorities. I can absolutely put an emergency call in my non-emergency call screen. Or I can absolutely put a non-emergency call in my emergency call screen. Okay, again, because that's based off priority. Now, the reason we have two different ones is actually because the emergency call screen is a bit more streamlined, because the idea is I'm trying to get this call in as fast as possible. All right, so instead of two separate columns with the header section and some additional fields up here like pickup notes and things like that, I have one column with fewer fields to pick from. I still have a patient section, again, not required, so I don't have any patient information, I don't have to put it in. And I have a pickup section where I'm getting them from, but I have no destination. Okay, so fewer fields, fewer things that I have to work with. Right? But it's not the call screen, it's the priority that determines if it's an emergency call or not. All right. That's it. We'll go ahead and put one in here. Yep, it's a training company. We'll say call type is, what do we got here? Now we'll go with, I guess, default for now. I'm just wondering, if it's an emergency trip, which one of these ones do you guys usually use? The inter-facility, pre-hospital?
Probably pre-hospital.
Okay, we'll go with pre-hospital for now, just so it kind of keeps in mind. Caller name, Mary. Here I do have a callback number, so like I said, this is the field I'll get added to non-emergency call screen. Caller, we'll say, is a bystander. Problem, accident. And we'll go code 2.
Now, I see that you have all the drop downs. If you start typing in those boxes, give you the same information as dropping it down?
Yep.
Okay.
So here, fleet, start typing training, starts narrowing down.
And you can tab between them as well?
Yep, so I'm tabbing between right now. So last name, we'll go with Leghorn. First name, Foghorn. He's always one of my favorites. Birth 4/25/1948.
I say boy.
What?
Yeah, I say. All right, and here it maybe that facility. It happened at the location here at 2500 Main Street. And what is the zip code over there for you guys?
53095.
53095. And if I put in the zip code, the system will find that zip code, see what we've set as the default city for that zip code. You guys in West Bend? Huh?
We just had a millennial realize who Foghorn Leghorn was.
took a little bit, huh?
Yeah, that's all I knew of.
So is West Bend the correct city?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So now I have my information. I hit this check mark, and the system thinks for a second, and it puts that call in right away for me. Starts blinking. Again, doesn't ask me about pickup time or appointment time because in the emergency call screen, not worried about it. We just need to get this call in, get it rolling right away. Okay. So here I have this one. I'm going to assign the call out for Foghorn. 3050 is currently my only available unit, so I'm going to double click it. Again, these two don't match. That's fine. Yes, and can't send the message. That's fine. All right, so now 3050 is alerted. Well, we've been on the horn with them, so they already know about it, so they're actually en route. And I think I blew it a little quickly, but on that map, it showed me they weren't too far away. It should take them a couple minutes to get there. Kind of nice. Again, 3050, efficient, not speeding. They already got at the scene.
With Columbus and Waupun crews that don't call us all the time, well, Waupun mainly, will the call stop in there for them?
Once they receive their CAD from.
If the crews put call times into their EHR, will it backfill into our dispatch database?
So the connection between dispatch and EHR is one way from dispatch to EHR. Whatever they do on EHR does not come back to dispatch.
Interesting. Okay.
We're getting smartphones. Screenshot it. There you go.
With the dispatch, have the 911 call with the patient information to you. Nothing.
Yeah, especially for like that.
They're still gonna have to follow with it. Yeah.
So we're getting smartphones. They could screenshot it.
Yeah, now, like I said, on this one, we knew who the patient was, but we don't need patient information to take the call. I talked about that. So if you don't have patient information, but you're getting it later on, well, one of the things after our initial ones, probably again on our next call, we'll look at how to add patient information after transport's already been assigned to. So, cool. All right, so they're at scene, and they found Foghorn. They brushed him off, put him on a gurney, threw him in the back of the unit, and they're departing scene. Okay, so I'll double click them again and set to depart scene. Now here is where some things start to change between our initial non-emergency calls that we did and this emergency call. The first thing it wants to know is, where are we taking the patient? Okay, now this will come up whenever I don't already have a destination picked out for the transport. So when we put this call on the emergency call screen, there was no destination section to enter. So obviously that's why it's asking this. Now, if you put the call in the non-emergency call screen or any of the other call screens that we'll look at as we go along, if you never enter a destination in those call screens either, same thing's going to happen. So the reason it's asking about the destination is because when we created the call, we didn't have a destination. And now we're leaving the scene where we're going to go. Okay, so in this case, again, we'll say St. John's, West Bend. All right. So I can put in the code, Oregon, search, just like we've seen, find the right destination, process that. Then, because again,
put in
go
whatever.
ahead.
If it isn't a saved resource, let's say they have to drive to an LZ to meet up with a helicopter. Can you just enter anything?
So it's, if that resource is in there, then yes. Otherwise, if you know they're going to a spot that is not necessarily a resource in the system,
yes.
In the workflow prior to the depart scene step, and we'll look at 30 feet here, there's an option that's called set destination. So at any point when the unit's assigned the call, you can always set that destination there.
Gotcha.
So after we pick the destination, now because it is an emergency call, it's one of those priorities we told the system to consider as an emergency transport. When we get to this depart scene step, where before we only had the odometer information on those non-emergent priorities, here we get additional questions we have to fill out because it's an emergency priority. How many patients are we transporting? How many patients refused transport? How many patients were dead on arrival? Okay. And then we have our odometer information. We'll do another emergency call a little later where we take multiple patients, all right? We'll say 2 or 3 or however many that we're transporting because maybe it was an MVA, all right? So you put that number in. In this case, we're doing the 1, but we'll see how the system handles multiple as well. In this case, you say odometer, you always 0 out, so we'll go to 0. It's also going to show me the problem as I selected it when I put the call in. Maybe the crew got updated information. It's not an accident, it's something else. I could always, update it to pick a different piece, so cardiac arrest or whatever it happens to be, or if it's still the same problem, I'll just leave it. And it shows me the transport mode, which I believe all your transport should be land transport. It defaults to that. If it's something else, you can always hit the drop down. And then we accept that one. And I must have accidentally put one in for DOA. Oh, I think what's going on there. All right, I'll fix it on the server. Don't worry about those. But we go ahead, we hit OK, and now that is en route. One thing I do want to point out to you, this is going to happen with the emergency calls. When we went to from the at scene to the depart scene, that call, even though we told the system hide runs with unit assigned, that call shows back up on my runs grid. Okay? And that's because information has changed. Something's updated. As in, we added a destination, or we told how many we're transporting. There was a change to the trip record, and because there was a change to that trip record, the system's going to bring that run back on the grid for me. Okay? Because the idea is maybe I'm not the one who did that change, and so it's kind of the system's showing it for me to say, listen, something's updated, just so you're aware, there's new information.
But if it's a one-way system, who else would have updated it? Oh, okay. Yeah. Good point. Never mind.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see something. Now, up at the top, there is this. If after that comes up to show you, if you want to make sure they're hidden again, up at the top there is a little button above that runs grid. Looks like a circular arrow. When you hit that circular arrow, I'm going to hit it now. The system refreshes that grid, and when it does, because that run is assigned, it'll hide it again for you. Okay. All right. And we'll go ahead and finish this one. They're departing the scene. We'll say they are at destination. Again, wants odometer information. And they're very efficiently sign over foghorn to the hospital staff. Okay. And 3050 is available again. All right. Any questions on the differences between my non-emergency call screen and my emergency call screen?
Can you go back to the field for taking
for taking what?
An emergency call?
So, yeah, you mean looking at the emergency call screen, or?
Yep, just like that.
Yeah.
So, I know you said you don't need patient and a minimum amount of information you need to add to a squad. And the reason I ask is we do not dispatch ourselves on any of our 911 calls. And the crews just radio in, they're running out on the 911.
So,
Okay.
in order to take a call, and we've defaulted several of them for you, obviously, but in order to take a call, the fields that are required are company, call type, priority, and fleet. So now that I've removed those, I get these errors saying you got to have something.
Yeah, we know that stuff.
Yes.
So if I want to, I can.
The hospital.
Well, let's go 3, and let's go training. So with no other information, no patient information, no pickup, no anything, I can save this call.
All right, good.
System puts it in, I can get this assigned out. Let's go ahead and get this on 3050. Yep, fine. Yep, no message goes out. All right, so now 3050 is they're alerted. We'll also say, hey, they're even en route. Okay. As they're en route, maybe we're still talking to the patient or the bystander, whoever it is. We're getting more information, or we're getting more information from, you said you don't get them called to you directly, you get them sent out from the county?
Correct.
All right, so maybe we're getting more information from the county, and we want to fill that information in. Okay. So I'm going to right-click the unit where that call is assigned. When I right-click a unit, I get all these different options available to me. First one being, or second one actually being Edit Run. So I'm going to choose Edit Run. And when I do that, the system will think for a second and then it'll open up our trip ticket record. So the actual record of that trip in the system. Okay. Detail tab is where I have my pickup and destination information. Okay, so if I need to add pickup information, and maybe it's a facility, so let's go ahead and say it's an emergency call from a facility. I'll go with, because I like picking, like I said, I like picking on them. And let's go with another manor. Becker Manor. Okay. If I know destination, I can add destination here. We'll also see in a minute how we can add destination through our workflow as well. So we'll leave that one for now. I can also, up here is my patient section. I can add patient information. I know we already took Foghorn, but I don't want to create a brand new one from scratch right now. So Foghorn gets to go twice today. He walked out, he got picked up. He gets to go back. Okay. Dispatch, so this is also fields that are coming from, can be available from my call screens, or I can add more information in here, such as, here's my priority. Didn't add a service level. Well, we'll go ahead, because that wasn't a required field, but for now, we'll say it's, critical care 2, whatever. We'll say his problem, because I didn't get a chance to fill that in. So here, down here more, was cardiac arrest. So again, I can fill in more information. Once I have all that updated, I can save this record and close it down. Little X. When I do that, back on my dashboard, I'll close all these things down because I don't need them right now. The run pops back up in my grid because even though it's assigned, we just edited a whole bunch of information. All right? So it's telling you edited. Well, I can refresh, and it's gone again. Okay. So then they're en route. Oh, go ahead.
When you refresh, does that send it out to the?
No. That does not resend the alert message. However, if I added that information and I do want to go to the crew, besides just calling them, I can open up my workflow, and one of the options in my workflow, resend alert message. So if there's any updated information I want them to get, I can always just resend that alert message. The other thing is, as I'm updating that information in dispatch, the CAD monitor, the CAD connector between dispatch and EHR will also send the updated information to their EHR record.
So they get an alert on their EHR that,
They'd have to refresh on EHR to see the new information.
It's our program.
Okay. Okay. Any questions, additional questions there?
you had mentioned a while back, sir, about location. If you don't have it in your drop-down, what is that?
You mean the destination?
Right.
Putting in an address.
Correct. If you have to type in something, I had to use the example, if you're going to an LZ somewhere, are you going to be touching on how to put that in?
So if I know the destination or I didn't add it or I want to update it, I can come into the workflow and choose this change destination option.
Right, you're just, now you've got that 911 call or a pre-hospital call, not taking them to the hospital, you're meeting air medical somewhere en route. How would you identify that?
So if it's not a resource that I can pick from in the change destination, I'd have to edit the run. And again, the detail tab has the pickup, has destination. Again, this is for resource. If it's just an address, I can hit the pencil button and type in an address.
Oh, okay, so wherever we would meet LZ, we would type that in there. That'd be good.
Is there a certain amount of required information that goes in there?
No, whatever you type in is what will then be available. So if I just type in LZ and nothing else, the system just will send LZ with no address information, right? Like I said, address line 2 is 125, Maple Lane, landing pad, and then
We use that, or we'll use that, so you don't necessarily need to have like zip code on an LZ or something like that, but I would put more than LZ, and I would put an intersection or
41 or Helms or.
and Walmart parking lot or.
yeah, and so these are freeform text fields. LZ
Park.
at Park and Main.
Are you able to map the Latin Lodge on that?
So if there's a park and a main, and you put the ampersand in here, and Google Maps knows of it, it'll try to find it.
Wow. That's convenient.
We did try putting that in for town hall, and it would not find it,
Oh.
even with an address. So it's not perfect, but it works well here.
Yeah, it's based off of what Google Maps, because we have an API to Google Maps. So if Google knows it, great. If not, then yeah, you got to find alternate means. And the other thing to point out here is in terms of destination, not on the emergency call screen, but non-emergency call screen, again, you can use resources. We've been using resources, but you don't have to. You can just type addresses in.
Well, let's say it's a discharge to a home, that isn't a resource, it's just a personal residence.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, let's refresh this. Good questions. Any other questions so far?
Maybe just a comment, like, for your development time, that non-emergency destination or, it would be nice to not have box, and that you could, if you didn't know the code, just be able to start typing feeder community and have that search automatic.
Yeah, right now to do that, yeah, you're right. You have to open the search because this is a specific field entry. But well, I can get that as a request into the system for you.
That'd be great.
Cool. All right. Any other questions so far?
I think we're good right now.
All right, let's go ahead. We'll finish this off. We'll say at scene. And then depart scene. Now notice when we went from at scene to depart scene, because we actually for this call put in a destination address, it didn't ask us about where the destination was we wanted to go. It already knows it. Okay. And we'll go with the one for now. 0 and save. Okay. I'll fix that later. And at destination. Odometer. And 3050 is done with Foghorn's second emergency call. Okay. All right, so far we've gone pretty straightforward, putting in standard calls to our non-emergency call screen, a couple emergency ones as well, walking them through the process. Any questions on putting calls in, assigning them out, and the differences between emergency, non-emergency, or even editing calls? Let's look at that a little bit too.
What happens if, so 3058 is still en route to their assignment. What happens if the facility calls and cancels them, says we don't want, or we don't need you anymore?
All right, so great question. Let's say I have trips that need to be canceled. Okay, so this trip for Daffy, the facility calls back, they want to cancel this trip, which means they'll also have to cancel the return trip. Okay. Well, a couple things. First of all, if the trip is already assigned to a unit, I can double-click the unit to open up its workflow. One of the options in the workflow, cancel. So I'm going to choose cancel and process that. And when I do, the system says, okay, are you sure you want to do this? And I'll say yes. And then I get this cancel reason window to pop open. And it says, all right, you need to pick a cancel reason. So I'm going to say, yeah, the facility canceled. And we'll say facility called and said trip no longer needed.
Well, that's all clear text too, is it?
Yep, that's a free text field. Once I do that, the unit goes to being available again. That call has now been canceled. Now, if the trip itself has not been assigned to a unit, so here was Daffy's return trip, right, later this evening, well, he's not going out, probably doesn't need to come back, I'm going to right-click the run, and there's my edit run option again. And then go to edit run. When I do, just like we saw for that second Foghorn Leghorn emergency trip, it opens up that trip record. Since the last thing I was looking at was my dispatch tab, it takes me back to the dispatch tab of this record. On the right-hand column is cancel reason. I give it a reason. Facility canceled. Might want to add a note, again, just why. So I go to the notes tab and say, patient no longer requires transport. I hit tab, it enters the note. I save the call. And this trip has now been canceled. If I close it down, I'll close the other one down too for Foghorn. That's fine. Come back to my dashboard, and his return trip is no longer in my runs grid because it has now been canceled.
For a couple of the areas we put in other reason or other option, I really would urge you try not to use that because it really makes it hard down the road when we're trying to find out reasons for why something happens or should we bill or not bill. I mean, there is, they'll try to put the actual reason, like for this cancellation, and there's a couple other sections that have others that we really prefer not to be used.
So if there's a transport that we have that you anticipate it to be a return trip, would you want to go ahead and start a return trip, or would you just take somebody from a nursing home for an hour?
Shut that off, because that would have been an option. Like if it's appointment, we should presume that it's gonna need a return.
Right.
But just because you took all down, struck the head, we're not assuming that it's gonna need a return.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Any other questions?
Nope.
Nope. All right. Any questions on any of the pieces that we've covered today?
It's pretty straightforward.
All right, great. Well, with that, we are coming up for the end of today's session. So a few things. First of all, if I do have units that I want to take off duty, kind of saw it before, I can either go to the on-duty module and hit the take off duty button, or again, always I can come into the workflow on an on-duty unit and say take off duty. So we'll take these guys off for now. In terms of our next conversation, some of the things we'll be looking at, we're going to put in calls and use some more of those workflow options with the calls, see what happens maybe if we have a call that's been in the system for a while at a certain status and crews don't radio back in and they're done, see how to handle those ones that have already been completed in the real world that are still running in dispatch. We'll put in another emergency call or two to see how we handle it with multiple patients. And from there, we'll start moving into putting calls in for future dates of service, as well as putting in what we like to call recurring schedules. Your dialysis patients, essentially, where you're taking them on the same trip over and over and over again. Between now and then, if you have any questions, please reach out to me and let me know. Otherwise, I see our next call together in terms of the dispatch end user sessions is going to be for Tuesday at 12:30. Okay.
One quick question, Travis. So we took those two crews off duty. What happens when you get to the end of their shift? Will it change at all? Let's say that we have a crew that ends at 4 o'clock. It's 3:30 right now. We get to 4 o'clock. Do they change in the unit tab? Do they look different at all? Or
they don't look different. It's just if you try to go to assign a run to them, it'll say, hey, this shift end time was such and such. Are you sure you want to do this?
And you say, I don't care.
And you say, yeah, work them till they're bleeding, and you go on.
Okay. All right.
Oh, it's got a vacuum mood.
All right, well, if anybody does have any questions between now and Tuesday, go ahead, reach out to me and let me know. Matt and Mike, I think we have a initial report session, admin report session on Monday. Just a little FYI on that. It's going to be more of a show and tell session for you to show me the reports that you have been getting from your old system or the type of reports you'd like to get out of our system so I can start configuring our system to match what you're looking for.
Yeah, that'll be kind of quick.
Okay. Well, good. That's good for us then.
Yeah,
All
no
right.
kidding. It'll be figuring out what kind of reports we're maybe going to want going forward, I think.
Perfect. I have a few samples, and since you have billing information, I can probably show you a little bit, but a lot of that's going to be generic data anyway, but at least you can get an idea of kind of what they'll look like. And then from there, we'll build them as you need. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for the time today. I will get this video uploaded to your server as soon as it's done encoding, and I look forward to talking to everybody on Tuesday.
All right, fantastic, Travis. Thank you.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
See you, bye.